Connecticut Valley Views is pleased to offer the following video production of Honoring the Past, Enriching the Future, a historical look at the Jewish Historical Society of Greater Hartford.
The Jewish Historical Society of Greater Hartford was founded in 1971 and is a beneficiary agency of the Jewish Federation of Greater Hartford. It was formed as an outgrowth of the Jewish Cultural Committee of the Jewish Community Center.
It's exciting because it is keeping records of everything we've done. And even though the organization's 40 years old, the history of Hartford and Jews in Hartford goes back many generations. As a historian, as a history teacher, it's really important to have those kinds of records. And it is a magnificent collection that we have. And I want it to be there for my son and for his children too.
In 1968, there was an exhibit at the Jewish Museum in New York called Portals to America. And part of it became a traveling exhibit, at which point the Jewish Center became interested and contacted one of the committees and thought that it would be a nice idea to have Hartford. And we talked about the desirability and importance, really, of having a Jewish Historical Society.
The Society's mission, then and now, is to collect and preserve historical documents, photographs, and memorabilia of the community, and to share this material through programs, exhibits, books, trips, archives, oral history, and film projects.
Several people got together and started a closet up on the third floor of the Federation building at the time. And it literally was a file cabinet where they could begin to document some of the older people in the community.
They had observed the Jewish community moving from Front Street into the West Hartford, Bloomfield areas. They saw that history was passing right in front of them. And as a result, and then they saw that nothing was, or little was being done to record it.
So they, I think, had an innate sense that this had to be preserved.
I did some interviews. One was with Louis Fox, the cousin of Beatrice Auerbach. And he had been on the Board of Education for many years, was a philanthropist, and I think he played a role in my being accepted at Yale Medical School.
Members of the community reached out to help the fledgling organization in any way they could.
I'm not kidding, everything but windows. What we did originally, I think, is that the Federation had turned over a huge box of pictures that had no names, no information on, no dates. And we tried to identify the ones that we saw. And by that time, we were involved and loved doing it. So I came in, I helped with the correspondence because I had been a secretary, so I could type.
When I would go into a home and the husbands were present, they'd say, "What are you doing here? She's not important. She didn't do so much in the war. Why are you interviewing her?" And then when she passed away, he was the first one to call the Historical Society up and say, "Could I have a copy of that tape?" He wanted to know and keep some remembrance of his wife.
In 1983, Morris Cohen created the organization's Jewish Sports Hall of Fame.
The annual program that they had for the inductees was probably the best attended program that the Society had.
In keeping with its educational mission, the Jewish Historical Society has published a series of scholarly journals. The first one highlights Jews in Connecticut politics, and the second one is an architectural history of synagogues in Connecticut.
And I gave the Jewish Historical Society a grant for about $10,000 to hire really one of the foremost state architectural historians to go all over the state, not just in the Hartford area, but all over the state, to find these historic synagogues.
And that had to be one of our greatest moments. My favorite example was there were 12 synagogues in Hartford at one time in the 20s and 30s, 12 different congregations. Today there are none. And if we didn't do this work and if we didn't document what was there, it would have been lost. It would have been lost to history.
In 2001, the Society created Witness to War, which chronicles the World War II experiences of Soviet Jews who had moved to the Hartford area. It became a third journal and also a traveling exhibit.
It was a fascinating project, and we found among our 40 people, we had soldiers, we had partisans in the forest and children hidden by the partisans. We had medical personnel who were in the armies. We had those who fled to the far reaches of the Soviet Union. And we had those who were survivors of camps, ghettos, and internment of one kind or another, and hiding.
In 2006, the Society moved to its current home in the Community Services Building on the Zach's campus in West Hartford. 1 year later, in 2007, more than 1,000 visitors stopped in to view an exhibit dedicated to one of the 20th century's most popular entertainers, Sophie Tucker. Known by the nickname the last of the Red Hot Mamas, Tucker, who was born in the Ukraine, grew up in Hartford.
His daughter Jane, when she started in the playing, gosh, I didn't get from a brother.
In 2008, with a grant from the Jewish Community Foundation of Greater Hartford, the Society launched a 2-year-long oral history project to document life in Hartford's North End.
I became active in the Jewish Historical Society only about 5 years ago. One of the reasons is I wanted to reconnect with people from growing up in the North End of Hartford. And one day, shortly after I joined, I was asked to be part of a brainstorming group for future programs. And I said, why don't we do a compilation of stories of growing up in the North End of Hartford, which is where most of the Jewish people grew up.
No matter how religious or not religious you may be, there is still a cultural history here. And it's really important, I think, for, my generation and my kids and then the grandchildren and everybody else to be able to look back and say, well, this is actually how it was then. You can't overstate how important that is.
The book launch for the book, Remembering the Old Neighborhood, attracted over 500 people. It was overwhelming. We ran out of space and out of chairs, but we certainly didn't run out of spirit and unity at that reunion. It was amazing.
A second volume is already underway, which will include stories from other neighborhoods in the Hartford area as well as the North End. Also in 2009, the Jewish Historical Society produced a documentary called Pride, Honor, and Courage. Jewish Women Remember World War II.
Some of the women that were interviewed had never before told their story. And we were, really delighted that they could share it with us, and therefore we could share it with many others.
Jewish life in Eastern Europe before and after World War II was the focus of a trip the Society organized in the summer of 2010. Rabbi David Small and Trinity College professor Sam Kassow led the travelers on a journey to Warsaw, Krakow, Budapest, and Prague.
And I think people learn, if they go on a trip like this, that it's important to have a sense of Jewish history. It's not just the synagogue and the religion, but it's also a sense of how did the Jewish people get from there to here. When you learn about history, you also reconnect with your Jewish identity, not just from a religious point of view, but from an ethnic and from a cultural point of view, and I think that's pretty important.
For a number of years, the Society and the Commission on Culture and Tourism worked together to document the history of Connecticut's Jewish farmers, which culminated in A Life of the Land.
It's really hit a responsive chord with synagogues and historical societies all over the state to really reflect that important Jewish history, which in these country settings has just about disappeared.
In its 40 years, the Jewish Historical Society has grown from a small group of dedicated volunteers to a 750-member organization. What would the founding fathers and mothers think of the organization they created 4 decades ago?
I think it's beyond their imagination. I think it is. To have a facility like we have is just marvelous.
If they were here today and could see what is being done, they would be overwhelmed by the breadth of programming that the Society does.
Today, the Society's archives include photographs, papers, and hundreds of oral histories. It continues to publish scholarly journals, books, and projects that shed new light on the Jewish community's rich and vibrant history. The wide range of lectures, workshops, and cultural programs also attract a diverse audience.
Hartford is a wonderful Jewish community, and I think it goes back to my background. I don't want, though I'm involved in the Jewish Federation, in the Jewish Community Center, and all kinds of Jewish, I want people to know history, and if it's not remembered, it'll just disappear.
Every individual has to have an ability to look at their past, because we gain perspective by looking at our past. We gain wisdom, we gain perspective, we see how others handled problems that are not the same as we face, but certainly problems that were just as great at that time. And so I think personal history is very important for a family, and I think institutional history is very important for a community, because that's what makes up a community.
It's been a great 40 years so far, and this organization will be moving forward for a long, long time, growing, adding new members, adding more exciting programs, and continuing telling the history of Jews in the greater Hartford area.